This damn thing on? Hey, folks, we're going to get started pretty soon. Take your seats. Don't forget to keep your social distancing. Wear your masks. Obviously, if you're in your own home, you don't have to do that.
Yes, we are live, John, just so you know. And E-list is climbing past 145, so people are coming in.
Just making sure. It's surreal to be thinking that I'm going to be talking to hundreds of people here in a second, and there's
You're talking to them right now. So
I know, and there's no and there's no sense of it from this side. It's a bubble.
Yeah.
Ooh, so this is a good time to like play with my backgrounds.
they only have a minute, so.
I like that one.
There, it's a bubble. Bubble.
Very cool.
That's one of my favorites. Or if you just want to get all zen, I like that. Calm, calm, calm.
You'll have to share the link or wherever you find those, John. Cool.
I know. I've been collecting them for a while. There aren't too many good ones, you know. It's a real. I think there's great opportunity out there for some cool stuff to be done, especially law or legal education related. There's a whole array of things we could do for law faculty who want virtual backgrounds.
Yeah. Give it a couple months and somebody will emerge.
Why not us?
Yeah. Got a good start.
It is 1 o'clock Central Time.
All right. Hey, folks. I know you're still arriving. We're gonna wait for at least one more minute. We'll start at 1:01 Central Daylight Time, and looking forward to getting started here. I could start sharing my PowerPoint, I guess. Hopefully nothing will explode. Share screen. I can't share the screen, Elmer. Host disabled, participant screen sharing.
Power.
Sorry about that. I should be good to go now. It's that one extra step. I need more checks on my checklist.
No, totally cool. This is why this is so much fun.
You should be good now. There you go.
All right, let's hit Shift F5. Let's hit Shift F5 again. And there we go. So if I do a stop share, then it's me talking. And then if I do a start share, I can just go right to my slide deck. Awesome. It's 1:02. We should get started. What do you think? Are we ready?
Ready?
Sure, we're ready. We're closing in on 250 people. So
all right. So there'll be They'll be coming in as I go through housekeeping and such things. All right, I feel like we should do like a drum roll or a clapper or something like that. Let's go. Hi, folks. My name is John Mayer, and I'm the Executive Director of CALI, the Center for Computer Assisted Legal Instruction. Welcome to CALIcon2020, Legal Education, Pandemic, and Tech. So let me start by sharing my screen, and I got some housekeeping things to do and some thanks to make and stuff like that. Here we go, share. So before we get started, actually, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. I'm sorry for this slight change. Before we get started, I'm compelled to take notice of the strife that's going on in the United States right now. And as educators of lawyers and of judges and legislators and future leaders in law, justice, and politics, I think we have a special responsibility. We have a say in this, and we can't be silent. We have to find our roles, and we have to step up to our responsibilities. Things must change. I won't attempt to speak for you or at you. I would rather I want to ask you to join me in a minute of silent contemplation, praying if that's your way, for the health and safety of our fellow citizens. Hoping for wisdom and strength to see us and our friends and our colleagues through this time, to do what is needed and to be better people through these terrible times. So join me for a quiet minute. Thank you. All right. So welcome to the conference, CALIcon 2020, Pandemic, Legal Education, and Tech. Got to get my PowerPoint warmed up. There we go. So this is the 30th conference that we've had, which blows my mind. Back in 1991, Tom Bruce and I started this conference. We called it, and I apologize for the very fuzzy picture I've got there. I couldn't get into the office to take a better one, but it was originally called the Conference for Law School Computing Professionals. We believed ourselves to be the beginners or at the beginning of a brand new profession, technoids, if you will. At the fourth conference, I even had a symbol of a mountain climber on top of a bunch of PCs as our aspirational thought that we are going to become important to legal education and to justice and into the education of lawyers. And so, we were called the Technoids. That was from, I don't even remember, I don't even remember the story. I think it was Ed Richards of Louisiana who may have coined us, called us, hey, any Technoids out there? So there's a mailing list that's been around since 1988, made up of the tech folk and many others at law schools who discuss things. It's been a little bit morbid lately. Now, of course, when we thought about this conference, we knew that it wasn't just tech people who did tech in law schools, right? Faculty did tech, law librarians did tech, the administrative computing folks, things like that. And so we conceived of the conference as a place. The librarians had AALL, the faculty had AALS. We conceived of this conference as being at that intersection, the place where these three communities could intentionally, not accidentally, run into each other and maybe have productive conversations, share experiences. If you look at the statistics for people registered for this conference, which is almost 1,000 or over 1,000, you see we've got a pretty good mix of faculty, IT, librarians, you know, and the other flotsam and jetsam that will show up, and that's awesome. This is our goal. We feel like we wanted to engage or improve the dialogue between those folks. Now, over the years, remember, this is the 30th conference. Over the years, things haven't gone as well as we've liked. The conference got big enough that we would have tracks. And so we would literally have tracks for tech folks, tracks for law librarians, and tracks for faculty. People would still engage in the breaks and at the meals, of which they were designed to be very long. The lunches were an hour and a half, the breaks were a half hour, so that people could run into each other and talk and share ideas. What's interesting is when we had to pivot to this conference, the online version, we've sort of like gone back to the future. We've gone back to the way it originally was. There's just one track, and all the sessions, be they whatever their interest or whatever their pitch, if you attend the entire conference, you will be exposed to librarians and faculty and students and tech folks, instructional designers, ed tech folks. Now, of course, this being an online conference, you know, you can choose to skip things, you know, sort of jump in and jump out. That's a feature, not necessarily a bug. But I would encourage you to go outside your areas of usual interest and to experience or to listen to the folks in the other communities who have things to say, so that you can walk a mile in their shoes and understand the problem space that we all inhabit. The other thing about this conference is we like to have fun. I'm sorry, I'm not wearing a costume. Actually, for considering that I haven't put on a suit in 6 months, I am wearing a costume. It's called a suit. And so, you know, but so I'm not in my usual dress up as Elvis or a Lego man or something like that. The other thing this conference is famous for, and I'm talking to the fact that there's a lot of people here who, for this, made their first CALI conference, so I'm giving you a little orientation here. We love snacks. So not all of you ordered the Happy Fun Time CALI swag box, but if you did, you got a box full of really weird, cool snacks. Scott did a great job on Chicago-style popcorns and things like that, as well as a name badge. Oh my gosh, I didn't put my name badge on before I came down here, but I'll have it later on. I had promised some people that there would be wasabi Kit Kats. Unfortunately, that wasn't to be. This is a true story. The wasabi Kit Kats were held up in customs. So chances are they're going to arrive just after the conference, and obviously before there was an opportunity to put them into the Happy Fun Time box. There was, of course, the coloring books that we included in there. I was pretty nervous about this. I'm talking to hundreds of people right now, and yet I'm in my living room. So I decided to color in one of the things. I couldn't keep inside the lines. I hope this looks all right. I'm calming down, though. I'm calming down. All right. I have a raft of people to thank, starting, of course, with my staff. They've pivoted beautifully into this pandemic. We are busier than ever in the last few months. We have a crazy amount of work to do. I especially want to call out Elmer and Scott, who are doing all the tech work and all the marketing work on this. I'm delighted, you know, that they continue to want to work for CALI. I want to also call out Dan. So Dan Nagy is our back end guy. He just had open heart surgery, just had triple bypass or so. It's okay. He's recovering nicely. If you're on, we're thinking about you. We're sending you our moonbeams of hope and power. All right. I want to thank my board of directors. This is the executive committee of the board. Chris Niedringhaus is our president. Stephen Johnson at Mercer is our VP. Deb Cohen's our treasurer. Marjorie McDermott is our secretary. Our board of directors is made up of law faculty, law librarians, and other folk from law schools. I love to throw them curves. They love to throw me curves, but they keep us on the straight and narrow and trying to build an organization and a collection of materials and tools that benefit you, our members. And that's a key thank you here. Without the membership of CALI, we would not be able to do this. We are we are, I often joke, we're the Bell Labs of legal education. We take on interesting and weird projects. We do things at scale. We look for economies of scale. We try to open up things like case books and computer assisted learning and multiple choice questions, and make them as widely available, and to hand agency to faculty and to hand agency to students so that they can construct their own educational environments. Of course, I got to thank the sponsors. We couldn't afford some of the things we do. We don't try to make a profit or come out in the black on this conference, and the sponsors help us quite a bit in that. I view them as part of the community. Their presentations are during the breaks, but I hope they're attending. And if this was an in-person conference, I would say, please, by all means, visit and talk to them. They are part of our community and our ecology as well. I wanted to especially call out Tim Stanley and Stacy Stern, CEO and president, respectively, of Justia. They have been super strong supporters of the CALI conference. Thanks so much, Tim and Stacy, if you're out there in the ether. All right, so some housekeeping. We're getting there. Some housekeeping. We're using the Q&A feature in Zoom so that we can, what's the word? So that we can filter questions. If you have questions that you think should be asked, put them in there and update, the ones that you like. Especially scroll all the way to the bottom for people, because it often happens is the first questions in get all the attention. I've got staff monitoring those. Jessica Frank, our A to J author person. We have a chat function. Actually, I'm not sure. I think we are using a chat function, but we're not monitoring it very much. And it's not private. So whatever you say there will end up on your permanent record. So be careful. We have a website set up at community.cali.org, and we've created, it's essentially a discussion forum. We've created a topic for every single session in the conference. And so if you want the conversation to continue beyond the session, that's the place for that to go. You have to log in with your CALI credentials, I believe. Elmer, correct me if I was right, if I just screwed that up. And
oh, you're right, John.
Awesome. Ooh, who said that? And you can set up your own Zoom meetings, your own private Zoom meetings there during the breaks. Think of that as a virtual hallway. You can continue discussion or find your own folks, because since we're not all in a room together looking, we have to provide other means by which interconnections can happen. Now the happy hour tonight, there could be many hundreds of you, and so we're structuring it in the following way. At 10 after 6, grab your favorite libation, and we're gonna randomly drop you all into a Zoom breakout room. The icebreaker is what's your takeaway from day one, and you all have to decide what one answer to put into the chat. Now, if you don't want to use that icebreaker, you just want to talk, that's perfectly fine. Then after 15 minutes, we're gonna come back into the main room, and then put you back into the Zoom breakout rooms with a different number of random people. So this is our way of stirring the pot, right? And the icebreaker there is dog person or cat person. You have to pick one. Good luck with that. And then when you come back, we'll do it one more time, but only for 5 minutes. And the icebreaker question is fall 2020 face-to-face classes. Are they happening? Yes or no? I'll bet. That's going to be an interesting discussion. All right, if you're tweeting about this, the hashtag is CALIcon20. Don't forget to follow CALI.org, and follow John Mayer too. If you're, so the conference website, which is at 2020.CALIcon.org, we're gonna keep it open. Now, when we did the call for speakers, we did a call for people to upload videos. We didn't accept everybody that uploaded a video because we had a very small group that we only had 21 open sessions. We had over 90 people submit proposals. I think we had maybe 20, 30 videos or so. But the thought here is that what we want to do is capture the experience of this last spring. What did you experience, and what advice or ideas would you give to others to sort of, this is like a StoryCorps idea regarding the pandemic and legal education and tech. So if you want to record your own conversations with somebody else, like an interview format, or your own video podcast, you could submit those as sessions to the website at 2020calicon.org, and we'll keep them, we'll post them, we'll host them there as a sort of ongoing conversation about this pandemic and legal education. All right, we've all had to stay away from other people at least 6 feet, experience social isolation. I've noticed that faculty were doing a great job of enjoying their teaching, their emergency remote teaching. They started to post these nerdy pictures of their setups. I thought I'd seen the ultimate setup from Jim Millis with this one, but then Josh Blackman came along and showed us all this one with 9 screens. There's a picture of Josh giving a talk to his students. Josh, that's epic, absolutely epic. We've all been through the Zoom School of Law. If you bought a t-shirt, it helped the food bank. I don't remember exactly which one. But of course, I think we got to start thinking beyond that. In the future, CALI lessons will be available on the Peloton so that you can get your exercise in and run your CALI lessons. Kidding, of course. What we did do, however, is early on when people started to share ideas, we threw up a website that collected those, including videos and tweet streams, resources for law faculty on remote teaching due to Corona. It was at cali.org/Corona. I noticed that people were offering to be guest speakers, and so we created another database of guest speakers or people who are willing to be guest speakers in a law school class. There's over 90 people on that. I think this is something that we're going to continue to do going into fall. It's just a good idea. Maybe add some features, more information about the speakers, so that it's easier to search and find people that you might want to do. We've got 2 surveys going right now with over 400 responses on the faculty side and a couple of hundred on the student side. We'll be keeping this open for another week or at least, because we want to get as much feedback as possible from students and faculty. So if you haven't filled out this survey, I'll put a link in the show notes and on the conference page. I just realized there isn't one there right now. And absolutely share this with your students if you're a faculty member. We're offering a course, a mini course, pardon me, called Preparing for the Future of Legal Education, Online Teaching and Techniques, Tips and Techniques. I expect that even if there are some face-to-face classes this fall, there's going to be a certain amount of, pardon me, there's going to be a certain amount of online education that's going to happen no matter what. And as a result, having more information or getting a little training in how to do higher quality distance learning will be a thing of great value for faculty. The signups for this just passed 400. Looking at the number, maybe it was 500. And so it starts next week on Tuesday. So faculty, if you're interested in this, you should go to courses.cali. Sorry, I have to move my Zoom screen. Courses.classcaster.net and sign up. So the old theme of the conference, of course, was Agents of Innovation. We pivoted to this new one for the pandemic. And I don't know what to say. I'm gonna read this because I found this to be one of the most inspiring things I found about this pandemic. Historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different. It's a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudice and hatred, our avarice, our data banks and dead ideas, our dead rivers and smoky skies behind us. Or we can walk through lightly with little luggage, ready to imagine another world and ready to fight for it. I think this pandemic has changed us. And I want to say that I hope that that's an opportunity, a crisis that we don't have to waste, something that we can learn from and become better legal educators and better technologists and better people all around. Notwithstanding the despair I feel in watching the news these last couple of days, I want to have hope. I've got to have hope. All right. So let's bring on our first keynote speaker, Dean Craig Boyce. I'm going to stop sharing here. And Dean Boyce, I was interested in inviting him to speak because of the JD Interactive program that they were running at Syracuse. And when we had a pivot to the pandemic, I had a feeling that talking to the dean who already had a online program would be wonderful, because their school obviously made that pivot much more easily than all the other law schools who weren't so fortunate to have an online program already. So without much ado, let me introduce Dean Boyce and turn on your camera.
Thank you so much, John. Good afternoon, everybody. At Syracuse University College of Law, we're busy planning for what instruction this fall is going to look like. And what I've been telling our faculty is that I believe that this will be a better experience for our students this fall, although for you it might be painful. But what we're envisioning is online, no mask, face-to-face interaction, online instruction. What I'd like to share this afternoon are a few thoughts on the future of online, and in particular, how that future has been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. First, I want to thank John for inviting me to participate. It's a real privilege to address all of you. I'd like to send a shout out to Chris Niederinghaus. We were colleagues at one point, Cleveland Marshall College of Law. Hope you're doing well, Chris. And I hope that this will be a conversation. We'll have some time for questions at the end, but let me just share a few things. As we look ahead to the fall semester, it's helpful to reflect on the semester that recently concluded. The COVID-19 pandemic forced colleges and universities across the country, indeed, even primary and secondary schools, to move all instruction online within a matter of weeks. As John said, the largest distance learning experiment in history. Now, make no mistake that COVID-19 has exacted a terrible toll on our nation in physical and mental suffering, loss of life, as well as economic devastation. But one of the unanticipated consequences of the virus is that it has dramatically vaulted us forward in the adoption of distance education. Now, for those of us deans who've been advocates of expanding online instruction, getting faculty in the past to agree to teach courses online has mostly been a process of cajoling, incentivizing, and bargaining. We've made progress, but it's been slow. And suddenly, virtually overnight, every faculty member in the country is teaching online. That is quantum evolution. Now, how law schools taught online in the spring left a lot to be desired. I think we didn't do it terribly well. With very little advance notice, schools scrambled to properly train faculty to work out the kinks of the technology and to ensure that both faculty and students had the necessary tools to be online: strong internet connection, laptops or computers, in some cases printers and scanners. But those shortcomings can be corrected and are being corrected even as we speak, because law school this fall, as John earlier suggested, will again necessarily involve a great deal of online instruction, and we want it to be better. The university presidents across the country have been trumpeting the resumption of in-person instruction this fall. But I've spoken with many law school deans over the last few weeks, including all of the 15 New York law school deans. And I can tell you we're all struggling to figure out exactly how we're going to implement our university's mandates for in-person instruction. Returning to campus sounds good. Students desperately want for law school to return to what it was just a few months ago. But unfortunately, to the extent that there is a return to residential instruction, it's going to bear little resemblance to what students experienced in, say, January of this year. In order to accommodate social distancing and ensure the health and safety of students and faculty, most schools will only be able to use roughly a third of their classroom space. Study space in libraries is likely going to be reduced. Face masks will be universally required of faculty and students. Students won't be able to congregate around faculty after class, who themselves may be shielded by plexiglass, or with one another in small study spaces. Traffic flow in buildings, including in stairwells, will have to be unidirectional and carefully controlled. Elevators may be available only to persons with disabilities. All of this was laid out in a sort of tongue-in-cheek, but I think very pointed way in an article that Josh Blackman, who may be with us today, wrote about what a day this fall is likely to look like at most law schools. All these challenges are going to lead schools to limit in-person instruction perhaps to 1Ls, or to only experiential types of courses, or to 1 or 2 days a week of in-person instruction per student. I think various models will emerge, but whatever instruction can't be delivered in physical spaces will have to be offered online. In fact, all instruction is going to need to be available online to accommodate those who will inevitably be ill, who are immune compromised or at special risk because of their age group. And so in many respects, online instruction will offer faculty and students a much better experience, the opportunity to engage face-to-face without masks. It will also allow us to provide asynchronous content that can enrich our students' educational experience, and will give us greater opportunity for formative assessment, something that law schools traditionally have had far too little of. The fact that legal instruction this fall will continue to be delivered online means that we'll have at least another semester, together with half of the last spring semester and the summer semester for those schools that have summer courses, to become more familiar with and proficient in providing distance education. As we continue to teach online, I believe we'll see new refinements in the technology that we use, and a proliferation of creative ideas for engaging students remotely. Faculty will become more comfortable with online instruction, and it will be increasingly normalized. Of course, we're going to continue to have challenges. Many of you are quite familiar with the 5 stages of technology adoption: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. I'm sure there's some technoids, as John puts it, among the audience who remember the adoption of email in your law school. I'm going back a ways. I was in practice, but I remember well when my law firm adopted SharkMail in 1995. Those of you who are librarians no doubt recall having to train faculty in online legal research tools like Westlaw and Lexis and others of more recent vintage. Each of these new technologies was met with groans and complaints and pushback, but over time, these technologies have faded into the background of the way that we work every day. And I believe that online instruction will be much the same. When we decided in 2016 to create a hybrid online JD program at Syracuse, the idea was initially met with a great deal of faculty resistance. Alumni were also alarmed that Syracuse University College of Law, our brand, would be diluted, that we'd be viewed as little more than a correspondence school. But we developed the JD Interactive program, and it has been a remarkable success. Applications have far exceeded the number of seats we have in the class. The median LSAT for our JDI students is 2 points higher than for our residential students. And the students rave about their experience. They're thrilled to be able to earn a law degree while keeping their jobs, not having to relocate families or borrow for living expenses. The forced pivot to online instruction in the spring was easier for us, I believe, because of our experience with the JDI program. We already had the infrastructure in place to deliver a quality online product to our residential students. But still, some faculty argue that things like clinics, trial advocacy training, moot court competitions could simply never work online. But as it's turned out, students have continued their clinic work remotely. 2 of our students participated just this last weekend in Baylor's Top Gun National Mock Trial Competition, which was conducted online, like a number of other competitions across the country. Not only is adapting legal education to online instruction possible, Adapting to it fosters resilience in our students. It's a highly sought after soft skill among employers. Now, we've had our share of students complaining that they're not receiving the education they expected. But I tell students, if you'd already graduated and were practicing law right now, you would be making the transition to remote legal work right along with all of your colleagues. You wouldn't tell your supervising partner that you couldn't do a Zoom negotiation, or a judge that you couldn't appear at a remote arraignment hearing because this was not the job you expected. Change is always difficult. We don't like it, we resist it, but ultimately most of us end up adapting and benefiting from it. Even the Supreme Court has now moved firmly into the last century as they've recently discovered the telephone, as well as the hazard of an ill-timed toilet flush. So what lies ahead for online instruction? Are we looking at the impending collapse of campus life and the dawn of all online? I don't think that we are. Even if remote learning were to become the dominant mode of higher education instruction, there are many reasons to preserve in-person components of education. Even our JD Interactive program still includes twice yearly residencies, week-long on-campus opportunities for students to engage one another and their professors face-to-face, to experience the social dimension of learning, and to forge closer relationships with one another. Instead, I believe that online instruction will be forced to provide this next semester, perhaps the spring semester as well, will solidify the place of distance learning as a useful component of an overall legal education. Distance courses provide students and faculty with flexibility in scheduling around their lives. They enable institutions to create innovative programs. For example, our online courses give students at Syracuse the opportunity to spend a semester away from campus in one of our externship placements in DC, New York, Philly, and other places around the country, while filling the balance of their course load for the semester with online courses. Even more radical is our new third-year away JD program that requires students to be resident in Syracuse for only 2 years. Then they can spend their third year away with a combination of externship work and online instruction. These kinds of options are going to be critical in attracting the post-traditional students that will be the dominant demographic over the next decade. In short, barring a prolonged pandemic, this one or a new one, I don't believe that online instruction will fully replace the traditional classroom, but I do believe that the fulcrum has shifted and that online instruction will be an increasingly important component of a well-designed legal education. Let me close by saying that at Syracuse, my vision, which is shared by my faculty and printed on mugs that everyone here has, is that we are leveraging our knowledge, skills, and imagination to expand legal education in innovative ways. Online legal instruction is one of the important ways we're fulfilling that vision. Thank you, CALI, and all of those joining CALIcon 2020 for being pioneers along with us in expanding legal education through technology. Thank you, and I'm happy to take questions, John.
Wonderful, thank you. So the first request is hold that mug up again because I want to do a screen grab. All right, got it. That was a strange request to make for during a thing. Well, you you anticipated many of my questions, which is awesome. But I'm gonna try to go a little bit deeper into some of those. And actually, because this is CALIcon, I'll ask the most interesting question I think first. Should law schools be hiring more technoids, more ed tech folks, more instructional designers? Because my sense in the last 10 years has been in the other direction, that tech has been moving up the channel into the main campus, or it's been outsourced to companies that sell services or things like that.
Yeah.
But I think having local people is great.
Yeah, I think you're right that I think there's a move towards centralization in a lot of universities, which means that the tech people tend to be gathered under the umbrella of the central administration. Universities that have had a strong online or distance education presence have also, I think, centralized a lot of the functions around the creation of online content, the videography, the studios, the instructional designers, and so forth. I think that as law schools begin to adopt distance education, they'll do one of two things. They'll either begin to hire more, as you suggest, although everybody right now is extremely stressed fiscally as a result of the pandemic, or we will rely, as we have, on expertise at Central, at our Central University. So certainly, I think one of the things that's necessary is somebody to sort of bridge that gap. So we have a pretty robust group of instructional designers, videographers, people who can assist with building courses that are online as part of our JD Interactive program. But we found that we needed to have folks on our faculty or our own IT people who could sort of translate, because a lot of what happens in legal education is very different than other parts of the campus.
Cool. So what about the idea of cross training? In other words, if you can't hire new people or create new slots, you can and I've seen this at some schools where your law librarians step up such that they gain new skills, and they're famous for that over 100 years of always picking up new things and being the trailblazers in those.
You're absolutely right. I 9 years now as a dean, and I've continually been impressed by the way that library staff in law schools are the first ones to raise their hand and say, "I'll do that," or "We can take that on." And so that's a great point. Cross training can be very useful in expanding your capacity when you don't have the ability to hire new people. And I think that the things that law librarians bring to it align very nicely with what's required in developing and designing and implementing an online program.
Now I'm afraid to look at the chat room because there's probably some law librarians in there either cheering or a bunch of law library directors saying, "Great, more work." Okay. How about this? This is a trope, but it's a necessary. We gotta get it on the table and talk about it. Tuition is too damn high at law schools. And there's hope, and perhaps misguided, I don't know, that distance learning technologies can at least apply some downward pressure to that. You mentioned in your JD Interactive that, even if you can't do much with the tuition, you can do a lot with the fact that people aren't going to have to move or if they're learning at a distance, it's less expensive for them to attend law school.
Yeah, so I think you're right. People are cognizant of the rising cost of tuition for law school. I think what people may not realize as much, and I know this because it's a data point that we pay a lot of attention to, is that despite what our sticker price tuition is, and ours is around $50,000 now, I think maybe 52. The discount rate, the average amount that is paid by students, is half that. And, that's not atypical. I know of schools that are, quite good schools that have discount rates in the 60s. And so we are not collecting as much as one would think. Now, if you've got $50,000 tuition and you're getting on average a discount of 50%, that's $25,000 a year times 3, $75,000 for legal education. Not a bad deal. The cost of attendance is the one area that really is stubborn and that adds a lot to the debt of students who decide to go to law school. Borrowing money for your living expenses, for your housing, food, and so forth for 3 years is a big ticket item. And that's one area where our JD Interactive students are at an advantage, and where online and distance education can really reduce the cost. Our JD Interactive students, most of them are employed. They maintain their jobs. They continue to be developing those years of job experience for their resumes as they're getting their law degree, and they're able to cover their living expenses while they're obtaining that education. So that is a huge factor, I think, and it's been really attractive for students who want to get a law degree and who come to our JD Interactive program. But, at the same time, and the other thing is that a program like ours, JD Interactive program, it's a skinnier curriculum. So we haven't put every course. We've got 150 or 200 courses in our residential program. We certainly have not put all those courses, made those available online as part of our JD Interactive program. And it's a curated curriculum that is skinnier than our regular curriculum. So if that were the only curriculum that you were running, you could do it with fewer faculty members because you just wouldn't have the wide range of courses. So that's another way in which online programs can be less expensive. Although the thing that we found is we want to offer more and more courses as part of our JD Interactive program as time goes on. So that curriculum is expanding, even though a lot of those are sort of unique specialty courses, residencies, experiential type courses, short courses that we can plug in, and that would still be less expensive to staff than full semester courses.
Oh, you're warming my heart. You're talking to a systems engineer here. Once you start doing something, you start to see economies of scale, templates.
Right.
Hopefully not cookie cutter, right? You still want to maintain the originality and the energy of the instructors. You don't want them to get lost, but you don't have to bespoke build everything from scratch, right? You've got off-the-shelf tools that will help you do that.
Right. Right.
So you're gonna, don't you think you're gonna start as a result of, in some ways, this pandemic was bad news for your JD Interactive program, and let me explain. All of a sudden, 200 law schools are now thinking, hey, we can do this online thing. Aren't you going to see a lot of, what's the word, a lot of competition now in this space?
Well, I think that's inevitable. It would be like us trying to maintain a corner on the Socratic method. That's not going to happen, right? When there is a good method for instructing students in the law, that's going to be ultimately, I think, widely adopted. And so at the moment, I think there may be half a dozen schools that have gotten variances from the ABA, because as you know, we're still limited to 30 hours of online instruction as part of the traditional residential JD. And so a variance is required from the ABA. Those variances tend to be limited in terms of the number of students that can be enrolled in these programs. Ours was just increased to 100 students. I think we presented a lot of data to the ABA about how it's going, how our students are doing, their credentials and the like. So yeah, I think ultimately we will have more competition. It is a big lift to get through that variance process with the ABA. And
that's got to change.
I'm looking forward in August. I'll be joining the ABA Council for the section, and I'm very much looking forward to pressing change in that body, which of course controls all of this, the standards and so forth. So you're right. I think that needs to change. But aside from the limitation at the ABA level, we have a state level limitation here in New York of 15 credit hours.
Yep.
Which would be hard to change as well. So there's much in legal education that should change and needs to change, ranging from what we're doing in law schools to the way that attorneys are licensed, to the way that we're accredited.
Yeah, it's funny how one thing doesn't change. It's like once big change is possible, everything's on the table for that. And let me pivot that. So we just talked about reasons why law schools. I hope I'm not. Yeah. Why law schools are pushing towards distance learning, but there's another piece here too, right? You're right. For the most part, law schools did an amazing job. Law faculty did a great job of jumping on. Fortunately, there was a great tool like Zoom. There was, of course, there have been tools like this have been around for years. One of the very earliest conferences, we used something called CU-See-Me, which was a Cornell University. That was the CU part of it to do video. And Peter Martin has been doing distance learning courses since the mid 90s. But there's also something that happened in the courts that's pulling the entire ecology of legal education and the justice system. The judges jumped on the Zoom because they had no choice. I attended 3 or 4 of their webinars where they were doing orientations for new judges, and things that were unthinkable just became, how do we figure this out? You know, bringing in your cell phone to hold it up to the screen as showing evidence. Wet signatures, forget that crap. Notaries, why do we have to notarize everything? Things that, I mean, Jessica and I had given talks around the country to court clerks and judges about CALI's A to J author project. And they're like, yeah, that's great, but mostly pretty cool to the idea of document automation or interacting with the courts online. I got to believe that's given you and legal education room to do big change, because now the courts are there. You know, you're going to have to graduate people into that practice space.
Yeah, you're right, John. You know, one of the things that's fascinating when you stop and think about this, you're right. It was the courts. Sadly, the bar exam administration has not gotten where it needs to be, and that's a big source of frustration and anxiety for, you know, tens of thousands of students. But you know, when forced, people adapted and things moved forward, which shows that this was never an issue about whether it's possible to educate online. It's about where was the impetus to make it happen? Where was the impetus to do it? And sadly, it takes a pandemic for us to really move in a very concerted way across all these different pieces of the legal education spectrum, to move in concerted fashion in that direction. But it's happened now, and I think, you know, we're still in that phase where everybody's looking forward to going back to the way things were as quickly as they possibly can. Which is why I think, you know, it's particularly important as we're going into this fall, and who knows, we may be still doing a lot of online instruction in the spring, depending on what happens with the pandemic. But all of that, I think, to the extent we continue to do distance in this mode, and that we're focused on this, it will just continue to accelerate the adoption of this as an alternative way of expanding and enriching legal education.
Cool. All right. So I feel necessary to pop open the Q&A and get the audience engaged here. Okay. Sort of a technical question from my viewpoint, not being a lawyer. Have you heard anything about changes to Standard 306 to accommodate adjustments required by social distancing during instruction?
Yeah, Standard 306 is the limitation on the number of credit hours you can have online. And so, yes, in the spring, the ABA issued a sort of a blanket waiver of that limitation, because, you know, everybody was online. They extended that through the summer for summer courses, and they're looking at what's going to happen in the fall. What they've done for the moment is they're in the process of developing a questionnaire that every law school will fill out as a way of sort of tracking and recording what schools are going to be doing, with the eye toward you know, waiving some of those standards as the pandemic continues. So I think the ABA has been pretty responsive. They've been more responsive, I think, than a lot of states have been on these matters, but they're certainly on top of it. And Bill Adams, who's the new executive director of the section, is doing a great job.
Cool. All right. So this is a great question. Thanks, Brian. Oh, by the way, thanks, Abigail, for that question, Abigail Deese. Brian Flaherty, great. This is a great question. I should have thought of this. He's basically saying that with online education, you know, don't you need more formative assessment? Don't you need to track your students more often than a big final exam at the end, and then you find out, you know, nobody had their camera on or was listening?
Oh, I see what. Yeah, in the context of what. Well, actually, you know, as I suggested in my earlier remarks, one of the benefits of online is particularly the asynchronous piece. So our JD Interactive program, as I said, has a couple of week-long residencies. The rest is all online, but the online is a 50-50 split between virtual classroom like this, a Zoom classroom, and asynchronous material that students complete in a self-guided fashion. That asynchronous portion of the JD Interactive program is where we've been able to include a lot of formative assessment, the kind of thing that you don't typically find in a law school education program. As you said, the model is generally a big exam at the end, with very little opportunity for students during the course of the semester to really gauge the extent to which they are, absorbing and understanding the material. Now, some faculty members do a midterm. Often those midterms aren't graded because of the amount of time that's involved, but by setting up these kinds of exercises in the asynchronous portion, you can really have a chance to understand. Our faculty love that piece of it because they have a better sense of where they need to focus more attention, spend more time, and things that they need to emphasize in order to make sure that.
So pardon me while I facepalm. Because CALI lessons are literally designed with the goal of providing formative assessment, both for the student to see if they're tracking the material themselves, and in the last 5 or 6 years, we have a feature called Lesson Link and analytics that lets faculty see the results of the students running them. And it's been tough. It's tough. It's a tough sell to faculty. And let me turn this into a question. How do, maybe not at Syracuse, but how do deans, what advice can you give to deans or to tech folk or to law librarians to convince skeptical faculty that this is not just about emergency remote teaching, that they can actually become better instructors?
Yeah. So I kind of use the rule of thirds, and we experienced this when we began our JD Interactive program. It was adopted and approved by the faculty on the condition that no faculty actually had to teach in it, or would be required to teach in it. And so, we began building the first courses with faculty who volunteer. So you got a third of any faculty that's, maybe first movers. They're the ones that are a little more adventurous and like to take on a new challenge. And then what we found is that as those folks did it, and a second wave of faculty, another third of the faculty really said, well, that's something, I could do that. And so we've had more people raising their hands to be part of this. And so I think that for anything, that's the way you begin. So I would say specifically with respect to the CALI lessons and formative assessment, a good way to approach this, I think, for deans is to get all the faculty members who teach, say, contracts, get them together and have them regularly meet and talk about ways that they can improve or work together to create more similarity across the coverage in those courses, which I think is very important. I think when you graduate a student, you ought to be able to say, this is what the student got in terms of education about contracts. And so encouraging faculty to work together with those who teach in the same courses, and then moving a step further and encouraging them to work together to create modules that they can all use for formative assessment or asynchronous modules that can add to the learning experience for students is a good way to begin moving that direction. I think, faculty are very smart people. They can see the benefit once they get into it. They can understand how this can be a better thing for students, that students can be more deeply engaged through these kinds of additional materials.
Absolutely. Well, one last question, and hopefully it's an easy one, but it's a personal one. Do you have any advice for me as an executive director of CALI, or advice for CALI? What should we be doing that we're not doing, or that you're not aware of, to help law schools, or to help law schools like yours make this transition in the pandemic?
Well, I think that my sense is that not all deans really have a good, firm grip on what it is that CALI does, and so maybe more do something like this for deans, as a way to, obviously we all have very busy schedules, but I think the value that you can bring to law schools and to deans as they're trying to help their faculty become better and to utilize technology. I love technology, and I tell my all of my reports, you know, if there's a way to use technology for us to buy a piece of software to do something better, different, faster than we're doing now, I'm willing to invest in that, not to displace people, but to give people the opportunity to be doing more interesting, higher level kinds of things. So, so I think you offer a tremendous benefit in helping law schools
Thank you.
be able to employ technology.
Great. All right. It's 3 minutes before the hour. I think we've run you through the ringer enough. Thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate it. And hope to have you come back to a CALI conference in the future.
We'll definitely do that, John. Thanks so much for the invitation, and best of luck for the rest of the conference.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Turning it on into gallery view. All right, folks, the conference has begun. So the next step is that there's a break, and during that break, you could take a break, grab a granola bar from the CALI Happy Fun Time swag box, or you can come to we have a couple of sponsors giving presentations at 10 minutes after the hour. I'm looking at that we haven't quite got that thing set up, but bear with us. I wanted to also mention that you know, this is the first time we've done a conference of this size online. So bear with us if there's technical glitches or communication problems. We're doing the best we can. We practiced, we rehearsed, we did a dress rehearsal, and even that we're learning new things as we go along, which is fun. All right. So thank you very much. See you in 10 minutes or so at the sponsor sessions.